Stone Guardian. A Paranormal Protector Tale. Book 1 in the Heart of Steel series. Written by Demelza Carlton. Autonarrated by AI Charlotte from Google. 1. Stanley Steel never forgot the moment he fell in love. He only glimpsed her for a moment, silver blonde hair flying in the breeze as she stuck her head out of the carriage window, her joyful face turned heavenward to drink in the rare rays of Scottish sun. The next moment, his face was on fire, bleeding from a blow delivered by the riding crop coming down to strike him again. Stan flung up his arms, blocking the second blow with the handle of his shovel. "That's right, boy, keep your eyes on the ground, where they belong. If you ever raise your eyes to my sister Caroline again." The rider clenched his hand around his riding crop and shook it. So that was the angel's name. Caroline. Stanley liked the taste of it on his tongue. A beautiful name for a lovely lass. Love made him bold. "It is a public road, sir, and 'tis no crime to look at those who travel upon it. Why, if we do not pay heed to every speeding carriage that comes past, a man's likely to get run over." The other men, his cousins all, began to laugh. The fine gentleman drew himself up, tugging hard on his horse's reins as he did so, making the poor beast dance in a circle. "I am William Steel, and one day all these lands will be mine. And you will work in the muck from dawn until dusk, until the day you die." "Steel, is it? Well met then, Mr. Steel, for that is my name too," Stan said. The other men chorused their agreement, for they were all Steels, though younger sons or sons of younger sons, so they'd grown up as farmers, while William Steel, evidently named for the knight who'd built the manor house that ruled over these lands, was a firstborn son's firstborn. William Steel snarled, "You may bear my great-grandfather's name, but you are scum compared to my sister and I. Our blood is as blue as the king's own, for we are descended from his first wife, English lady that she was, whereas all of you are descended from the scullery maids the old man bedded and wedded in his grief for his lost lady. Your blood is as murky as the mud you shovel, and not worthy to be mixed with mine or my sister's. If you so much as look at her again, I will have you flogged. And should you even attempt to speak to her, it will be the last thing you ever do." He kicked his horse hard, and the poor beast leaped forward, having more sense than its master, as it avoided Stan and headed for the road that the carriage had taken. Something touched Stan's shoulder. He whipped around to find Whiston standing behind him. "You should not anger that man, Stan. He's a hard one, they say, and his father sent him to school in England, learning to grind all Scotsmen beneath his boots. If the rents go up much more, none of us will be able to afford them, and we'll have to go work in some factory or worse, the coal mines. Better to tempt the devil himself than the Steel who'll rule the manor." Stan didn't care about William, for he could only think of Caroline. "Ah, but it's his sister I want to tempt ways. Did you see her? A lovely lass who looked like an angel." Grant laughed. "You heard him, cos. We're not worthy of angels, or even lasses who look like them." That's when Stanley Steel vowed he would prove the man wrong. He was worthy of Caroline Steel, and he would make her and her brother see it. One day. 2. No stupid virus is going to keep us from having the holiday of a lifetime. Alethea winced. "But Mum, the stories we're hearing here about all the sick people in Italy. That's why I persuaded your mum to stay in France for a bit longer. We've found a lovely town with a weekly farmers market, and one of the lovely Snell farmers was willing to let us park our motorhome on her farm for as long as we like. You should see the view across the hills from here. It's just lovely." Mum interrupted, pushing her way in front of the camera next to Dad. Alethea had to smile. Dad had never been good at superlatives. If she asked him what Snells tasted like, he'd probably say they were lovely too. "There is talk that they might close the borders though, and you won't be able to fly home." She didn't want them to come home early, they'd been planning to drive around Europe for years, but the Premier had been adamant that if West Australians wanted to come home, they had to come home now. I'm sure they'll be open by Christmas, which is when we'd planned to come home anyway. If it takes any longer, I can always find a job. Everyone needs nurses, Mum said. Her eyes narrowed. Are you taking proper care of my orchids? Yes, Mum. Watering them only once a week, and just the right amount of sun. There was a whole page of instructions, and she'd been following them religiously. And here she'd thought house-sitting for her parents would be easy, seeing as they didn't have any pets. And what about your New Year's resolution? Any progress? Mum prodded. Alethea sighed. Dealing with delicate orchids was much easier than actually achieving her resolution this year. She probably should have said she'd lose weight or something. Anything would be easier than. Because you actually have to go looking for love if you want to find it, sweetheart. Go out to places where you'll meet new people. Then go on dates. Another sigh escaped. I want to, Mum, but we're working on a really exciting dig at work, and when we're done for the day, all I want to do is shower off the dirt and fall into bed. I mean, it's the first time anyone's done this kind of investigation on a colonial-era cemetery before, and some of the stuff we're finding, it's just highly confidential, so confidential the landowner had made them sign all sorts of non-disclosure agreements so they wouldn't share their findings with anyone. Really exciting, she finished. Are there any men your age at the dig site? Mum demanded. Yeah, but all the exciting ones are dead, Mum. Or already taken. Next time I call, I want to hear you've been on a date. An actual date, Alethea Caroline Bell. And I want to hear all the gory details. Dad paled. Maybe not all the gory details. Mum smacked him and he disappeared from view. Yes, all the gory details. I'm a nurse. Well, a retired one. I saw every kind of gory there is before my meal break, and then saw it all again on the second half of each and every shift. I want to know if what does your cousin Callie call it? Oh, that's right. If he gives good dick. Anguished howling from Dad in the background. Alethea wanted to make the same sounds. Mum, Callie only says that to shock people. I'm sure she's never actually said it to someone who's equipped with. Oh hell, now she was blushing. A penis? Mum finished for her. No, she was not going to talk about her sex life with her mother. Even if they were video calling her from France, while she hunkered down in their East Perth apartment. Mum? All right. I'm sure you'll use your good judgment, like you usually do. I mean, you're not Tacy. Mum, Tacy's the most responsible out of all of us. As a single mum, she kind of has to be. And she's a business owner. Yeah, but. All right, Mum, I'll do my best not to make the same mistake Tacy did. I won't sleep with an abusive asshole who'll try to kill me, and I'll make sure to use 2 condoms in case one breaks. Happy? Mum frowned. You know what I mean. You're just starting your PhD project. You don't want to mess things up and never finish. Do you know how many people never finish? No, and she didn't care because she wasn't going to be one of them. This cemetery dig was going to give her all the material she needed for her PhD project, and a whole bunch of papers. Honey, we have to go. Claudine said she's ready to take us on a tour of the farm now, Dad said, tugging at Mum's arm. Mum wagged her finger at the screen. A date, Alethea. Promise me you'll go on a date. Yes, Mum. A flurry of goodbyes ended the call, and Alethea's screen went dark. She closed her laptop. At least she hadn't had to make any promises involving penises. 3. He's put the rents up again. That's the second time in a year. If the price of wool drops any further, we'll have to sell the sheep just to pay rent, and it's only a matter of time before we run out of sheep, Harlow said. Wystan just hung his head. He'd said little in the months since his wife and daughter had died. Even after Stan, Harlow and Grant had moved into his cottage to help him out. All right, they'd moved in as much to save on rent, as one cottage cost less than two, but Wystan hadn't really cared. Stan shook his head. As always, it would be up to him and Harlow to come up with a solution to their problems. Wystan was no help, and heaven only knew where Grant had gone. There were jobs in the factories, he'd heard. A man could earn an honest living if he was willing to leave the farmland where he'd grown up, and move to the city. Or closer to home, maybe he and Grant could take up coal mining, leaving Wystan and Harlow to run the farm. Between them, they might be able to stave off eviction for a while. But if the rents rose again, as Stan didn't doubt they would, for there were whispers about William Steel and the mighty mortgage he'd taken out on the land he'd inherited from his father. Grant burst into the cottage, slamming the door open so hard it bounced off the wall and nearly knocked him over. He didn't seem to care though, for he only rubbed idly at his shoulder as his grin widened. You should all get down on your knees and thank me, for I have found the solution to all our problems. A solution so brilliant it will make all our fortunes, and we'll never have to pay rent again, for we'll all be rich landowners in our own right. Grant threw a slim black book on the table. We shall all emigrate to America. Harlow burst out laughing. That's a good joke, brother. The only men making money in America now are those who own or sell slaves. Seeing as that's illegal here, and even if it wasn't, we have no money to buy anyone, so you surely mean we will have to sell ourselves into slavery to some shady, illegal slave dealer you met down the pub. Even Stan had to laugh at that. Grant only pouted. That is not true. I did not hear it from some stranger at the pub, but from one of the grooms up at the big house. He found this book in William Steele's own carriage, and there is talk of him letting all the servants go, so as he can sell the big house before it drives him bankrupt. What money he has, he plans to buy trade goods to take with him to the colonies. And if the Steels in the big house are doing it, then you can be sure there is money to be made. If William Steel is going to America, then first want to be on the other side of the world from wherever he is, Stan declared, flipping the book open. Either here or New South Wales or... He squinted at the first page. Where on God's green earth is the Swan River colony? Grant's grin returned. He took the book from Stan and leafed to the pages at the back. It's in Australia, on the other side of the island from Sydney. No convicts at all, and they say that every man who arrives there before the end of 1830 gets 40 acres of land, with no rent to pay, ever. Stan's mind spun. 40 acres? That was larger than William Steele's estate here. He seized the book. There must be some catch. No one would give such largesse for nothing. Ah, but here's the rub. We must invest £3 for those 40 acres. I don't know about you, but we'd be lucky to rustle up £1 between us if we sold everything we own, and that would barely pay for our passage to this colony. You need to keep reading, cos. There's more. Any man who pays for the passage of a labourer will get 200 acres per man. A certain Sir Thomas Peel has hired 2 ships to carry men and all that is needed to tame this colony, and he promises to give a portion of his land to every man who signs on to sail with him. 40 acres per single man, after 5 years of indentured labor. Indentured servitude. Stan had heard of such things in the Americas, where it was little better than slavery, but with the promise of so much land for only working 5 years. In 5 years he'd be able to prove himself worthy of Caroline. He'd own more land than her brother, free and clear with no mortgage. That'd show William Steel who was worthy. Sign us all up. You, me, Harlow and Wystan, Stan instructed. 5 years of labor for 40 acres is a bargain by any man's reckoning. If this Swan River colony is half as fertile as this book says, we'll be rich men, well able to afford to pay for passage for the rest of our family to come and join us. Or to come back here and buy the big house for ourselves. Grant clapped his hands. It sounds like a wonderful adventure. Harlow regarded Stan with hard eyes. It sounds like madness, or a mad gamble at least. Why should I let such lunacy infect me? Because it's lunacy to stay or to go. Life is a gamble, and right now, the only choice we have is in the manner of our madness. We may take a gamble on this Swan River colony, and work 5 years of our lives for our own land. The work will be hard to be sure, but to own land is worth it. Or we can stay here and work our collective asses off, selling sheep and the sweat of our brows until there is none left, and we are evicted. There is no future here. If we stay, we may only delay fate for a little while, but ultimately, we will lose. If we emigrate, one way or the other, we will surely win. A faint smile touched Harlow's lips. Ah, a man after my own heart, cause you know how to win me over. I never gamble unless I know I will win, for I hate to lose. Besides, there's Whiston to think of. The man needs a change of scenery to cure him of his melancholy. A little hard work in this Swan River wilderness might do him good. Stan drew in a deep breath and blew it out slowly. It was settled, then. To the Swan River colony they would go, and the devil take the hindmost. 4. Alethea never imagined so much could change in a week. National borders were closed. State borders were closed. She wasn't even allowed to leave the city. Restaurants and pubs and libraries closed, and there was caution tape around the children's playground in every park. Oh, and everyone's hands were raw with the overuse of hand sanitizer, like people had forgotten how to moisturize. The best part was how you were supposed to stay 2 meters away from everybody, so you couldn't catch the virus. The one that had killed so many people in Italy and China, and she couldn't remember where else, but she'd seen coffins on the news, all lined up, waiting to be buried. As if she didn't see enough coffins at work. Well, coffin fragments, as the ones she was digging up had been there for more than a century, compacted under first a tennis court, and then a car park. Her work, being outside and easy to avoid people while doing it, didn't change. Well, someone had stuck a bottle of hand sanitizer in the lunchroom, but everyone preferred to wash their hands thoroughly instead. Because when you were dealing with human remains, a squirt of sanitizer just didn't cut it. Actually going on a date was looking to be about as hard as buying toilet paper from the suddenly empty supermarket shelves. So she did what she always did when she needed help, she asked the girls in Bell House. Well, there's always online dating, Callie said. You can get to know the guy chatting online before you actually meet him. Yeah, but there's so many ways he could fool you online, Octavia argued. Fake profiles, fake pictures, seriously, some guys create dozens of them so they can persuade girls to send them naked pictures. And don't forget dick pics. So many guys want to send you a picture of their hairy sausage because they think you'll actually find it attractive. She shuddered. There's no hurry, is there? I mean, this pandemic should be over in a few months, like the SARS and MERS scares. Or swine flu or bird flu, it'll all be a distant memory come Christmas, Tacy said. It's nearly Christmas? Rory asked, 5-year-old eyes shining as only a little girl's can. No, sweetheart, it isn't until December. When it's summer, Tacy said. She checked her watch. Actually, it's nearly bedtime, so you should go brush your teeth and wash your face, then put your PJs on, ready for bed. Rory frowned, but she did as her mother said. Alethea missed living with them all. In Bell House there was always someone to talk to, no matter what the hour. Unlike her parents' place, where she was alone all the time. And there was talk of locking people down in their homes, like had happened in other countries, so she wouldn't even be able to visit them. Alethea shuddered. Surely the pandemic wouldn't get that bad in Australia. We'll help you set up your profile, Tacy said. With Callie and Octavia here to advise you, you won't make any of the same mistakes they made. Octavia coughed. Mistakes Callie made, not me. I've never bothered with online dating. Online gaming, well, what else am I supposed to do in a camp in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but a decent internet connection? But this isn't about me. It's about Alethea and her quest for love. First, she'll need a good photo. She surveyed the room. Stand here in front of the bookcase. That'll show how much you like to read. What are those things on the shelf? Alethea asked. Everyone else laughed. Rory's obsessed with the Mandalorian, so she wants everything Baby Yoda. She set them all up along the bookcase so they can watch the show with her. Tacy reached for the nearest green figurine. I'll move them out of the way. No. Leave them. Between the books and the figurines, it shows Alethea's into books and pop culture. Geek girls definitely get attention, Octavia said. But I don't even know what the green thing is, Alethea protested. I like my aliens hot and muscled and well endowed. Not small, green and wrinkly. That's all right. You can mention your passion for knobbly alien peen in your profile, Callie said. God no. That'll get you triple the number of dick pics, I swear, because they think you're asking to see the goods. Do not mention penises anywhere in your profile or preferences. Not even if that's the only part of him you're really interested in? Callie asked. Callie. Alethea protested. I'm supposed to be looking for love, not a hookup. Well yeah, but you have to start somewhere. A first date, your first fuck, I mean, how can you know he gives good dick unless you've sampled the goods? And that is why Callie is still single, because she only dates guys who are as into first date sex as she is, which is why she never gives them a second date, Tacy said. Hey, good dick is an increasingly rare commodity. It's not my fault most guys don't know what to do with their dangly bits. Or any part of a woman's body, really. And we're back to why Alethea is looking for love, because the perfect man doesn't exist outside the pages of a book, Octavia said. A chorus of agreement greeted that statement, which made Alethea miss living with them all the more. Sure, they bickered like siblings instead of cousins, except Octavia and Tacy, who actually were sisters, but they were family who always had each other's backs. Or dating profile, like the one Octavia had already managed to bring up on her tablet screen. Complete with a photo of Alethea in front of the bookcase that didn't look half bad. Right, let's get this filled out, Octavia said. Interests? Books and archaeology, Alethea said. Yeah, dead guys and fictional ones. Callie reached for her drink to toast Alethea's choice. The best kind. Tacy hushed Callie while Octavia continued, favorite date activity? Amazing food I don't have to cook. They all laughed at that. Tacy was easily the best cook among them, which was why she ran a successful cafe, but Alethea was hands down the worst. Your ideal partner? Alethea took a deep breath. A history buff who likes reading and travel, who's not afraid to get his hands dirty, who's looking for a forever relationship, and gives great dick, with a gorgeous body to go with it. Oh, and he has to have a sexy voice that can take me halfway to heaven, with the skills to take me the rest of the way once the pants come off. Callie and Tacy laughed, but Octavia was frowning at the screen. I can put in the first bit, but the bit about getting dirty and anything after it. Nope, you're going to have to word it better than that, or all you're going to get are mud wrestlers, lonely farmers and homophobes obsessed with butt sex. Not to mention an inbox full of porn. She tugged on her ear, thinking. How about a man who's looking for the love of his life, so he can make her happy? Tacy raised her hand. I'd like one of those. More laughter, until Alethea sobered. Yeah, that might work. Octavia shrugged. If it doesn't, you can just change it. I mean, your perfect match might actually be a mud wrestler or a lonely farmer. And if you do meet someone lovely who doesn't quite click, you could always introduce him to the rest of us. Callie could do the dick test, Tacy can check if he brings joy, and I can do a background check, to make sure he's not some crypto king on the dark web who made all his money on drugs and sex slaves. When everyone stared at her, she just shrugged. What? There are people out there like that, and they look like ordinary guys, not monsters at all. You have to be careful. If Alethea hadn't resolved to do this, she probably would have given up altogether at this point, but the girls were being so helpful and hopeful, something good had to come of it surely. 5. It's time to pay what you owe, Stan said, knowing his cousins had his back. But I still haven't got all of my land grant from the governor, and my family is arriving soon. After they've settled in and the governor gives me what he owes, whined Peel. Not Sir Thomas Peel, just plain old Mr. Thomas Peel, who had long since lost any of the respect that would have earned him even an ordinary title like Mr. 5 years we've worked for you, Peel, and now we want what we're owed. 5 years of pay and 40 acres each. As promised, in the contracts we signed back in England. Everyone else left, while the 4 of us stood by you. Englishmen and their families went crying to the governor to be let out of their contracts, but we're Scotsmen, and Scots always keep their word. We've done everything you asked, and these are our terms. If we can't have the acres you promised back in England, we shall have these instead. Stan held out the hand-drawn map Whiston had copied from Peel's own plans. The plans the governor had sent him, along with the grant of these lands. It might not be the entire estate Peel had been promised, but it was more than 10 times the size of the paltry 160 acres Stan was asking for. Now write a letter to the governor, telling him you're giving us these lands under the term of our contract, for if we have to pay a visit to the governor without that letter, we will be forced to tell him you are in breach of contract, and I've heard the prison at Van Diemen's Land is a harsh place for any man, let alone one who is accustomed to having servants. Then what will your family do when they arrive? For the governor will surely take your lands as forfeit. Enough! Peel cried. Indeed, there appeared to be an actual tear in the corner of his eye. You shall have your letter and your lands. Though others might not be so honest, I too am a man of my word. Less than an hour later, all 4 Steels piled into a boat to sail up the coast to Fremantle, where they'd take the river to Perth and the governor's office. There, they would trade Peel's letter and the map for the titles to their own freehold land. Land they would return to once they'd bought some supplies, enough to see them through until harvest in the summer. Maybe next year or the year after, they'd build another cottage or 3, instead of cramming into the one tiny stone cottage that had been their quarters for 5 years. Now it would be home. And you are? The governor's secretary asked. Mr. Steel, Stan said, pulling Peel's letter from his coat. I'm here about the plans for the new mill, of course, the secretary said smoothly, rising to offer his hand to Stan. The governor would be delighted to lay the foundation stone. Ah, no, not the mill. We hear about a land grant down near the Murray River. The secretary didn't seem to understand. But the mill. The governor said you would be in today, and to make sure I told you, he is in favor of the new mill, just in time for the next harvest. Stan shook his head. I think you must have me mixed up with someone else. I'm not building a mill. The secretary flipped feverishly through the papers on his desk. But you are Mr. William Steel, are you not? Stan's heart froze. William Steel was here, and not in the Americas? He forced himself to smile. Oh no, William Steel is my cousin. I'm Stanley Steel. More like a second cousin, but so were Whiston, Harlow and Grant, and they were family. Which would make the lovely Miss Carline Steel your cousin too, more's the pity. Quite a ravishing piece of goods, that one. I bet your cousin gets a dozen offers a day for her hand, and likely more. The secretary winked. I bet he's holding out for an offer from one of the big landholders out at York, so he can sell her for the right price. Carline was here too? And likely to be sold to the highest bidder as a bride? God, did William have no shame? So much for Stan having to prove himself worthy of her. William Steele wasn't worthy to be her brother if he meant to sell her to some rich old man. No. He could not let this happen. Not to Carline. Stan forced out another smile. A pity there aren't enough pretty women in the colony to be brides for us all. But time and tide wait for no man, so if you'd be so kind, we've reached an agreement with Mr. Thomas Peel about some farming land along the Murray River, and we'd like to see the titles granted in our names, if you please. Of course, of course. In fairly short order, Stanley, Grant, Whiston and Harlow became landowners. They thanked the secretary and hurried out of the office. What's the rush? Harlow asked. Didn't you hear the man? William Steele will be here shortly, and Carline is here in the colony with him, to be married off to whichever wealthy landowner he deems most worthy. Stanley waved the sheaf of papers at his cousin. I mean to ambush him and make sure the worthy man who wins her is me. Isn't he the man who struck you with his riding crop and threatened to flog you for looking at her? Whiston asked. All three men stared at him in surprise. Whiston shrugged. What? I've lost my wife, not my wits. Unlike you, Stan, if you think the man who threatened your life for looking at his sister will let you marry her. Perhaps Whiston was right. But he would never forgive himself if he didn't try. 5 years of hard work to win this estate had to be worth something. He only hoped it would be enough to win Carline's hand.